So you're going to want something enough under your head to support it so it's not just hanging so severely to the floor. Give your neck a break. Adjust things so you can see. We're clearly going to be doing side lying for this video. And I just noticed that I straightened myself out rather than just get into the fetal curl. So once you get in here in your knees, try to get them bent to a nice sitting 90-degree angles at the hip, 90 degrees at the knee, and find that rather than curl back, come up fully onto your side, fully onto that shoulder, and I'll do this turned over so you can see my back as well. And choose whatever side you want for face down and face up that will be doing the movement. And we're going to be obviously learning how to move the trunk in this side lying position. You're going to be moving the top, excuse me, the top, the ceiling facing part of your body, but also, and you're going to want to notice how you do that, but also you're going to want to notice how the side against the floor stabilizes you, and how the two sides are interacting, of course. And once again, I'm just going to be going through these in kind of a quick fashion to just show you what they are, but as always, break it down into the different parts and really explore them very slowly. If I'm doing an exploratory motion rather than a demonstrative motion, as I am here, you likely wouldn't even see it. It would be so small and so slow. So what I'm doing, do about a quarter of the total thing at a time, no more than that, and about a quarter of the speed and the size that I'm doing at least, and then maybe half that again. Really explore the details slowly and in a very small range. Know how you start the movement. Where do you initiate it? What's involved in it? If I'm moving the pelvis, what does that do to the rest of my spine? How do the ribs respond? What do they do? What does my head do? And so on and so forth. So always be moving very slowly in a very small range. This is not an exercise. This is an exploration of how you do what you're trying to do. And the more you realize as many sensations, as many kinesthetic signposts, like, oh, this rib's doing that, or oh, my upper chest is doing this, or, and so on and so forth through various parts of your body, the more choices you have down the road. And also in talking about doing things on the side or the limb or whatever it is that's easiest for us to do, that feels the most relaxed, the most efficient, the best, the least pain, or the most comfortable, whatever it is for you. Really practice that in your mind and feel it. Feel every nuance that you possibly can about that. And then in your imagination, take a position where you would be doing that on the other side, but only practice it in your imagination. Take all that you felt and experienced on the one side, the good side, if you will, and imagine doing it on the other side. Impose all the feelings and really build your memory of that movement into the other side, and then practice doing it on the other side as much as possible. So that's how the working with the imagination goes. And so a lot of these movements on the floor end up being, because the bottom side is stabilizing and the top side is moving, we're getting a lot of cross body information going. So again, pay attention as you're doing these things. Well, if this hip's doing that, what's this shoulder doing? Or conversely, if this shoulder's doing this, what's this hip doing while this shoulder is doing that? And so not only getting the side-to-side connections, but the cross-body connections. Just, again, feel as much as you can about the smallest of movements and build on that. Alrighty, so side lying. So we'll start with, let's start with the arms reflecting the knees and the legs as much as possible, both at 90-degree angles. 90-degree angles. So we're just going to practice just lifting the elbow. It doesn't have to be a big movement, like I'm saying. I'm just doing big enough for the camera to be able to pick up what I'm doing and how it ultimately affects the rest of my body, or how it's affecting my body. You explore how it affects your body. Now notice what happens in the spine. For me, obviously, or not, maybe the camera's not picking up much, but it starts to roll my upper body backwards. And my head agrees with that. My head doesn't stay looking down here. It just wants to agree with that. And then I let the arms alone, and I begin to lift the knee. Leave the foot down and just lift the knee. Oh, my elbows want to come apart. How about if I do it only as far as my elbows will stay together? There we go. Kind of shows that they're related movements. So for me, again, the pelvis is rolling back as I lift the knee, and my spine is beginning to turn with it. But I'm stopping that by keeping my elbows together. And the same when I was lifting my elbow, I did not lift the knee. I only lift the elbow as long as nothing happens in the knee or the pelvis. Only the top, and with the knee, only the lower half. So let's coordinate those two and lift them together. The hands stay together, the feet stay together, and we lift the elbow and the knee together. And try to not do one more than the other. Think about, feel your way into thinking that they depart contact one another at the same time. And when you come back, they make contact again at the same time. And notice it rolls me like a log. And let that go. And again, don't go at the pace I'm going. I'm going at this pace to just demonstrate for the camera. You can explore that whole scene for, a long time. And the next one would be, how do we think about leaving the knees and the elbows together, doing just the opposite, raising the foot first, see what happens. Leave everything else together, only the foot raises. See what happens for you in your pelvis and your spine, your head. For me, everything wants to roll forward. The pelvis rolls forward and brings the spine along with it. So now leave the legs, leave the elbows, and raise just the wrist and the hand. This is definitely a more challenging movement for me. This rotation of the shoulder. So be very careful. Only do what is absolutely comfortable for you to do. And you'll notice that my shoulders and my head roll forward. If I didn't allow that, I wouldn't be able to lift my wrist and my hand. So make sure you allow the motion in your body that wants to happen, that makes this an easier movement. So lifting the feet and the hands while leaving the elbows and knees attached tends to roll me forward. So let's play with doing that together. And again, they part company at the same time. You only move in the range that's comfortable. And they touch back together at the same time, or sometime soon. But that's the idea that you're playing with, to coordinate the motion. And notice what it does to my body. I roll forward. Not only forward, I notice my left side shortens. Like my ribs shorten a little bit on that side and then open up again as I come back onto my side. That's what's going on for me. What's going on for you? So that's those two motions. And the other one I think we talked about is, well, I know we have. So this one, as much as you can, you'll have your arms straight out. And again, your knees bent in the same way and your arms out in front of you, or, you know, wherever one needs to be. But because this movement actually comes from the pelvis and the shoulders, not so much the hands and feet moving the trunk. This is about moving the trunk to move the limbs. So you're going to slide the shoulder forward, which will, of course, push that arm forward. And I only go as far as is comfortable and easy, and my knees stay where they are. I realize I think I'm out of the camera range with that one. Slide out a little bit. So again, my knees are staying where they are. The shoulder rolls forward to move the arm forward and back. And you can play with that. Notice what happens in the spine. I notice my head wants to roll forward because the spine is rolling forward. And where does that stop? Going down the rib cage before the rest of the body is stabilized by the pelvis not moving. And then leave the top half alone and do the same with the knee. The knee rolling the pelvis forward so that the knee slides forward. And then come back. How you come back? What part of you do you use to push forward and come back? Is the top half easier, the bottom half easier, smoother, different in any way? Where does that movement stop in the spine before the shoulder would have to respond as well? And then, of course, connect the two. Just do the whole forward like a log. Forward like a log. And then you can leave the knees or the pelvis alone and move the shoulder back. Notice, of course, my head wants to come along with that motion. Notice how far down the motion goes in your back. Is it about the same place as going forward was without moving the pelvis? These are the kind of things you want to notice. Is the movement through the spine sequential? By vertebrae, rib, 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 or is it kind of just all one thing? How do you go forward? How do you go back? And bring yourself back to neutral. And then the same thing, you're going to leave the top half alone and start to roll the pelvis back to draw the knee back. And this one is, I notice immediately my shoulder wants to, it's harder for me to do that without following through with the shoulder. That's a more challenging movement for me. Moving the pelvis, just the pelvis, back. Noticing where that stops in my spine. That's a little further. You can play with them together. How do you get back here? And how do you come back up? What parts of yourself in your core are involved in that? And again, on an exploratory level, this is much slower, much smaller, and takes a lot more breaking down and playing with different parts of it to really feel what you're really doing. This is for demonstration purposes only. And then, once you're going like a log forward and backwards, and each one individually, of course, then we get to play with a counter. So in this one, we're going to play with, let's do one that, let's see, my pelvis going forward and the shoulder going back. So the pelvis is going to roll forward while the shoulder rolls back, so we get a twisting motion. This you definitely want to play with on a much, much smaller level than what I'm doing right now. So the harder motion for me was the pelvis going back just on its own. So for me, let's try the pelvis going back while the shoulder goes forward. See what happens. That's a much more, feels much more limited to me in that direction than it does this direction. That's just me. You notice what you notice about you. Yeah, that one is interesting, but you can feel the crossbody. And again, especially here, really notice what the side against the ground is doing. I mean, the side against the ground is having to do just the opposite, in a way, against the ground. So you're getting a lot of crossbody motion going on. Let's see, was there another one on the side? So we got we got the clamshell one going, and we got the backwards, forward, crossbody. I think that's it for now, for the sideline ones, all right? Yeah, excellent. Again, just take your time with each one of these and really develop them and revisit them like a lot to really give your nervous system a lot more information about how the limbs can move the trunk or the trunk can move the limbs and how that works. And you can think about, well, how do I do that? And I don't know, there's all kinds of functions where we need these toys. So play and play carefully, play small and play slow. Ciao.